So attacking the rim or attacking your defender and getting to the paint is something that a lot of players struggle with. It seems hard to do, especially when there's a defender crowding your space, but it's actually a lot simpler than a lot of people make it out to be. And like most things when it comes to basketball, it comes down to footwork. So I got my dusty shoes down here, and I'm gonna use these to demonstrate some tips that you can work on to get to the rim at will. So principle number one is going to be outside man wins. And it's exactly how it sounds, meaning the man on the outside wins. So when I'm thinking about getting outside of my defender's foot, we want to think about that in literally every principle of every move we do. So if I were to break down in a between the legs dribble right here, I'd be breaking down inside of my defender's foot. A good defender is going to be looking at my hips. So even if I'm going between my legs, signaling that I want to go left, I cannot go left until my hips turn left. So if I'm breaking down in a between the legs dribble, I'm trying to get outside of that defender's foot. So I can just work on that motion right there, being able to break down outside of that defender's foot easily as possible. And then I want to work on being able to get by, working my driving angles. So before we move on to the next principle, let's work on a couple of things you can work on that are always going to get you outside of your defender's foot. So I can work on bounding with my cross, bounding with my between, being able to shift on that outside foot. And notice when I'm doing these bounds, I'm not just lateral, I'm attacking my defender's foot. So anytime I cross and shift, boom, boom, I'm attacking that defender's foot right there, trying to work myself on the outside. So now you know how to bound and get outside of defender's feet and find our angles to attack. Now we want to work on being able to always find a trigger foot, meaning a foot that's back, whether it's deep like this or slightly. Always being able to trigger on that back foot so we can actually get by our defender. Ooh. All right, so I'm bounding, I'm looking for space, and I'm always able to find that trigger foot. If I'm going right, it's with my left foot. If I'm going left, it's with my right foot. Woo, I'm out of shape, y'all, so excuse the heavy breathing. So we don't have to make that complicated. We don't have to really put much effort into learning 100 different moves. We just need to learn the key fundamental principles of that footwork to make ourselves a much more efficient attacker. So here's a simple sequence that you're gonna stack and add to the first sequence we just did. You can make a set number of bounds that you wanna do. For this one, I'm just gonna do 2 to keep things simple. And then after our bound, we're gonna work on really triggering that back foot before we take off. So let's go. 1, 2, trigger. 1, 2, trigger. Every time I take off, I'm really digging. I'm digging, boom, with that back foot to take off. And the thing is, I'm already set up every time I shift, so I don't have to zero step and step backwards to take off. Every time I change directions, I got a new back foot. So I'm just working on really pushing off of that. Ooh. Ooh. Third and final principle when we're making these drives is being able to shift our body weight from one side to the other. So when I make my bound and I get outside of my defender, I found my trigger foot. Even after doing that, I can still make my driving angle terrible by driving here when my defender is there. So the next step is being able to take that back foot, and although it starts going here, I gotta be able to shift right there. If there was a defender right here, this foot would be past them. They would be here creating a point of contact, getting them off-centered, and I would be back on my line. So now we really want to focus on that aspect of it. So let's stack all 3 of those together and work on it. 1, 2. Ooh. Notice that driving angle. I'm ending up in front of that defender, not going towards that wall or towards that wall. And I told you I was only gonna give you 3, but a bonus tip to that is focusing on your shoulders being low. If this was my defender's hip, I'm trying to get as close to that defender's hip as I possibly can. So now to stack a 4th skill on top of that, we're gonna go down towards our cone right here as we get around. Really focusing on getting that shoulder low. Working on leaning my body, staying balanced. Notice on none of these plays am I accidentally kicking my shoe. because I've mastered the simple skill of being able to push and relocate that foot behind our defender. So work on all these, add this to your training if you've been struggling with getting to the basket and getting to the paint. Till next time, it's Coach Eddie.